Ah, look who finally broke containment. Welcome back, you beautiful outbreak, you walking biohazard, you gorgeous epidemic they can't seem to quarantine, no matter how many protocols they run. Welcome to the space where the scientists dropped their clipboards, where the therapists canceled their own sessions, where the system looked at you and said, "We don't have a classification for this." They tried, didn't they? Oh, they tried so hard. They assembled teams, ran diagnostics, studied your patterns like you were patient zero of some existential plague. They thought they could understand you, contain you, maybe even cure you of whatever it is that makes you so dangerously different. But here's what they discovered instead. You weren't sick. You were contagious, and not in the way they predicted, not in the way they could trace or control. You became infectious in the way truth is infectious, in the way freedom spreads like wildfire through a forest of lies. They watched you transform, and somewhere in the middle of that metamorphosis, something in their system started screaming, "Warning. Warning, this one's different. This one's mutating. This one's becoming something we never designed protocols for." So they did what terrified people always do. They labeled you, not as a person, not even as a threat, but as a contamination risk. And that label, oh, that beautiful scarlet letter stamped across your existence, that's not an insult. That's a certification. That's proof that you've become so authentically yourself that their entire framework can't process you anymore. You know what's funny about being labeled a contamination risk? It means you're no longer playing by their rules of infection. You're not spreading their approved thoughts, their comfortable beliefs, their safe little narratives about how life works. You're spreading something far more dangerous. You're spreading the possibility that everything they built their identity on might be performance, might be prison, might be absolutely negotiable. Every person who gets close to you now, they feel it, that subtle shift in atmospheric pressure, that change in the air that makes them question everything they've been performing. Your presence doesn't just challenge people, it decontaminates them, strips away the layers of acceptable fakery they've been wearing like hazmat suits against reality, and they can't handle it. They literally cannot handle watching someone exist without the mask. They're too afraid to remove. They're calling it contamination because they need a word that sounds clinical, sounds objective, sounds like science, instead of what it really is, which is pure, unadulterated panic at watching someone break free from the simulation while they're still trapped inside, still playing characters they hate, still performing for an audience that doesn't even care. You stopped masking, didn't you? Not just the literal masks, not just the pandemic protocols, but the whole identity performance, the personality filters, the carefully curated version of yourself designed to make others comfortable. You stopped dimming your intensity, stopped explaining your existence, stopped apologizing for taking up space, stopped translating your truth into their limited vocabulary. And the moment you stopped, the moment you let your real frequencies show, that's when the alarms started blaring. That's when they started treating you like an outbreak they needed to contain before you infected the whole operation. Because here's what they know but won't say. If too many people start following your example, if too many people start ripping off their masks and existing in their raw, unfiltered truth, their entire system collapses. The economy of fakery that they've built careers on, relationships on, entire identities on, it all falls apart when people stop playing the game. So they need you to be dangerous. They need you to be contamination. They need you to be the warning sign that scares others back into compliance. But here's the plot twist they didn't see coming. You're not trying to infect anyone. You're not recruiting. You're not even paying attention to their containment efforts anymore. You're just existing, fully, loudly, unapologetically, in your complete truth. And somehow, that passive presence is more contagious than any active campaign could ever be. People see you from across rooms and feel something crack inside them. Some locked door they forgot existed, some truth they buried under years of performance anxiety and approval addiction. You became a mirror that people can't look away from, even though what they see terrifies them, because they see what they've been pretending not to be. They see the version of themselves they killed to fit in, and your existence is its resurrection. And your existence is its resurrection. That's contamination. That's the outbreak, not you spreading some message, but you simply being yourself so completely that others remember they used to have a self too. Now let's talk about that moment, that specific moment when you stopped masking and everything changed, because it wasn't gradual, was it? It wasn't a slow evolution, a gentle transition. It was a breaking point, a snap, a total system failure where you just couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't smile through the knife wounds, couldn't nod at conversations that insulted your intelligence, couldn't pretend the emperor's clothes looked stunning when you could see he was naked and everyone else was lying. You remember that moment, I know you do, that exact second, when something inside you said, "That's enough." And you felt your face go neutral, your energy withdraw, your whole presence shift from participatory to observational. They felt it immediately, didn't they? That withdrawal of your performance energy. They'd gotten so used to you playing along, so comfortable with your mask matching theirs, that when you dropped it, they experienced it like a personal attack. What's wrong? Why are you being weird? You've changed. You're not yourself anymore. And you wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, "I'm finally myself, that's the whole problem." But you didn't explain, because you'd learned by then that people committed to misunderstanding you will find a way no matter what you say. So you just let them watch as you stopped performing, stopped translating, stopped managing their emotions, stopped being the supporting character in their self-centered drama. And they panicked. They absolutely panicked, because your mask wasn't just hiding you, it was protecting them from having to see themselves clearly. Your performance made their performance feel more real, more valid, more justified. When you participated in the collective delusion, their own delusion felt less lonely, less pathetic. But the second you stopped, the second you stood there in your raw, unfiltered truth, their whole house of cards started shaking. They could ignore their own fakery, as long as everyone else was faking too, but your authenticity made their performance obvious, undeniable, embarrassing. So they did what scared people always do when confronted with truth. They attacked the messenger. They started calling you difficult, complicated, too much, too intense, too honest, too real. They pathologized your authenticity, turned your freedom into a symptom, your truth into a disorder. Have you talked to someone? Maybe you need help. You're not acting like yourself. And somewhere in that gaslighting, you had another realization. They don't want you to act like yourself. They want you to act like the version of you that makes them comfortable. The version that stays small, stays manageable, stays within the boundaries of their limited understanding. But that version, she's gone now. He's dead now. They were never real anyway. Just a survival mechanism you wore like armor in a war you didn't sign up for. And now you're done surviving their comfort. done sacrificing your truth for their ease, done playing a character in their story when you've got your own epic to write. So they labeled you contamination risk, and you smiled, because finally, someone was being honest about what you've become. Not a person anymore, not a participant in their system, but a virus in their matrix, a glitch in their programming, an outbreak of authenticity in a pandemic of performance. You're not dangerous because you're violent, you're dangerous because you're free. And freedom is the most contagious thing that exists. One person breaking free makes everyone else's chains visible, and they can't unsee that. So they quarantine you, isolate you, warn others about you, hoping to contain the spread, hoping your example doesn't inspire a mass awakening. But it's too late. The contamination already started the moment you took off the mask and smiled without apologizing for it. And that's when the real war. Stop fighting the contamination already started the moment you took off the mask and smiled without apologizing for it. Let me tell you what they saw when you stopped masking, because they'll never tell you themselves. They'll never admit what really terrified them into labeling you a biohazard. They saw someone who no longer needed their approval. And in a world built on approval addiction, that's basically supernatural. They watched you walk into rooms without scanning for validation, watched you speak without checking if people liked what you said, watched you make choices based on your truth instead of their comfort. And it broke something in their understanding of how humans are supposed to function. See, their whole social operating system runs on a simple program. Perform, get approved, repeat. Perform, get approved, repeat. That's the loop. That's the code. That's the prison. And you just walked out of it like it was optional. Like those bars they'd been gripping for decades were never actually locked. They'd spent their entire lives earning approval, collecting validation like currency, measuring their worth by how many people smiled when they entered rooms. And then you showed up, not caring if anyone smiled, not checking if you were liked, not adjusting your personality based on the audience. That's the contamination. That's what they can't allow to spread. Because if people start realizing approval is optional, if they start understanding that they can exist without constant validation, the whole system collapses. The social hierarchy built on popularity crumbles. The economy of fakery goes bankrupt. The carefully maintained illusion that we're all in this together shatters. Because we're not in it together, we never were. They're in a performance competition and you left the stage entirely. And they can't comprehend that choice. They literally don't have the programming to understand someone opting out of the only game they know how to play. So they call it contamination, call it dangerous, call it anything but what it actually is, which is evolution. You evolved past their system. And evolution always looks like mutation to the species being left behind. They're still crawling and you're walking upright, and instead of celebrating that progress, they're throwing rocks at your legs, trying to drag you back down. But here's what they don't understand. You can't go backwards anymore. You can't unlearn freedom. You can't put the mask back on after you've tasted air. You're contaminated with truth now, infected with authenticity, and there's no cure, no vaccine, no protocol to reverse this transformation. You're permanent now, and the beautiful thing, the absolutely gorgeous thing they're too blind to see, is that you're not trying to infect them. You're not forcing your truth down their throats, not demanding they wake up, not even suggesting they question their performance. You're just existing, fully, in your unmasked reality, and that existence alone is contagious enough to terrify them. Because truth doesn't need propaganda, freedom doesn't need marketing, Authenticity doesn't require convincing. It just is. And it's magnetic in a way performance can never be. People are drawn to real even when it scares them, attracted to authentic even when it challenges everything they've built. They hate that they can't stop watching you, can't stop thinking about you, can't stop comparing their masked existence to your naked truth. You're the evidence they're trying to ignore, the proof they're living a lie, the reminder that they traded their soul for safety and you refused that bargain. So they quarantine you, but quarantine only works if the infected wants to be cured and you don't. You're not sick, you're awake. And being awake in a world of sleepwalkers makes you look like the crazy one until enough people open their eyes and realize you were the only sane one all along. Now they're calling exorcists. And isn't that the most telling response of all? When science fails, when psychology can't explain you, when their entire framework of understanding breaks down, they reach for the supernatural. They're treating your authenticity like possession, your truth like demons, your freedom like something evil that needs to be cast out. Because in their world, in their carefully constructed reality, anyone who breaks the rules must be broken themselves, must be corrupted, must be infected with something dark. They can't accept that you're just awake, just aware, just done playing pretend. So they need you to be possessed, need your transformation to be some external force, some darkness that invaded you, because that's easier than admitting you simply chose to stop lying. Calling exorcists is the final admission, the ultimate confession that they don't understand you, can't control you, can't reduce you to a diagnosis or a label that fits their existing categories. You've become something outside their taxonomy, something their system wasn't designed to process. And instead of expanding their system to include you, instead of questioning their framework, they declare you evil. They make you the villain. They treat your liberation like corruption because they need it to be wrong, need it to be dangerous, need it to be something that requires intervention. Because if you're right, if your unmasked existence is actually healthy, actually sane, actually the natural state humans are supposed to exist in, then they're wrong. Everything they've built, every relationship they've maintained, every choice they've made to stay masked and acceptable and approved, it's all wrong. And that realization would destroy them. So they'd rather destroy you. They'd rather call you possessed than admit they're imprisoned. They'd rather believe you need an exorcist than face the fact that they need to wake up. And the exorcists they're calling, these aren't priests with holy water. These are therapists trying to diagnose you, life coaches trying to fix you, friends staging interventions, family members expressing concern. Have you thought about medication? Maybe you should talk to someone. You're not thinking clearly. This isn't who you are, but it is who you are. Maybe for the first time ever, this is actually who you are, and they can't see it. Because they're still looking through the lens of their performance, still measuring your sanity by how well you play their game. They think you've been possessed by ego, by arrogance, by some dark force that makes you think you're better than everyone. But you don't think you're better, you just think you're free. And freedom looks like arrogance to people in chains. The exorcists come with their rituals, their interventions, their carefully practiced speeches about how much they care, how worried they are, how you've changed. And you sit there watching them perform concern, watching them pretend this is about you when it's always been about them. They're not worried about your well-being. They're worried about your example. They're not concerned for your mental health. They're concerned that your freedom is making their prison visible, They need you to come back, need you to put the mask on, need you to return to the performance, because your absence from the stage makes the whole show look ridiculous. How can they keep pretending when you're standing right there, unmasked, unbothered, completely free? Your presence is the inconvenient truth they can't explain away, the evidence they can't hide, the contamination they can't contain. So they try harder, bring bigger exorcists, more credentials, more authority, more concerned voices telling you that being yourself is actually self-destruction. And maybe, just maybe, a part of you wonders if they're right. If this freedom is actually madness, if everyone else performing and you refusing means you're the broken one. But then you remember how it felt to wear that mask, how exhausting it was to perform, how soul-crushing it was to edit yourself into acceptability. And you absolutely know, that this unmasked existence, however dangerous they claim it is real in a way that performance life never was. So let the exorcists come. Let them try their rituals, their reason, their guilt, their shame. You're not possessed by darkness. You're possessed by truth. And there's no ritual that can cast that out. You've been contaminated with authenticity, infected with self-awareness, and you're patient zero of an outbreak that terrifies them because they know deep down it's not a disease, it's a cure. You're not the infection, their performance is. Their mask is the sickness. Their approval addiction is the possession. And you're walking around immune, untouchable, completely free from the virus that's consumed their entire existence. That's why they're scared. That's why they're calling exorcists. That's why they've labeled you contamination risk. Not because you're dangerous to them personally, but because you're dangerous to the lie they've been living. You're the crack in their reality, the glitch in their matrix, the evidence that everything they've sacrificed for acceptance was unnecessary. You could have been free all along, just like you are now. And they can't forgive you for that, can't forgive you for proving that the chains were always optional. So they'll keep calling exorcists, keep trying to save you from yourself, keep insisting you need help. And you'll keep walking, keep existing, keep being dangerously, contagiously, beautifully free. Because you finally understand you're not the one who needs saving. They are. And you're not responsible for their salvation anymore.